As men cross the age of 60, many begin to notice subtle yet frustrating shifts in their energy, vitality, and most notably, their performance and responsiveness in the bedroom. And while it's easy to blame these changes solely on aging, low testosterone, or a general stress, the truth is far more shocking and often overlooked. It may be the very fruits you've always been told are healthy, they're quietly sabotaging your erections and hormonal balance every single day. Because while fruits are widely promoted for their vitamins, antioxidants, and fiber, not all fruits are created equal. And for men over 60, there are specific fruits that can drastically interfere with blood flow, disrupt nitric oxide production, elevate estrogen levels, spike blood sugar, or contribute to arterial stiffness, all of which directly impair the ability to achieve and sustain firm erections. And these fruits may seem innocent or even beneficial at first glance, but their hidden impact on your vascular and hormonal systems can be devastating over time, especially when consumed regularly, which is why more and more urologists and nutrition experts are now sounding the alarm and urging older men to rethink what they put on their plate, even if it comes from nature, because in the delicate ecosystem of male sexual health, especially post-60, every bite matters. And when you're already facing natural age-related decline in testosterone and nitric oxide levels, the last thing you want is to unknowingly consume fruits that make the situation worse. And yet this happens every day to thousands of men who are told to eat more fruit for general health, but aren't told the full truth about how some fruits are loaded with sugar, phytoestrogens, or inflammatory compounds that directly sabotage penile blood flow and vascular relaxation. And the worst part is that these negative effects can be cumulative and slow building, meaning you might not even associate your gradual decline in firmness or mourning. Would with the fruit salad you had every morning for breakfast, or the fruit smoothie that seemed like a better alternative to processed snacks. But inside your body, something different is happening. Your insulin is spiking, your blood sugar is rising, your arteries are becoming less flexible, your testosterone is being quietly suppressed, and the end result is a slower, softer, more frustrating sexual response that becomes harder to reverse the longer it continues. And the first fruit to be aware of, which will be discussed in full shortly, is one that many consider harmless or even essential for hydration, yet it contains such high amounts of fructose that it may be as damaging to your vascular health as a sugary soda, and its frequent consumption has been linked to increased belly fat, reduced testosterone, and insulin resistance, all major enemies of healthy erections. Especially after 60, when the body becomes far less tolerant of metabolic disruptions and far more sensitive to inflammatory triggers. And what's even more alarming is that this fruit is often recommended in heart-healthy diets, even though its high glycemic load can silently damage the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels in the penis, which are already fragile and prone to dysfunction as men age. And when these cells are inflamed or impaired, they produce less nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for relaxing blood vessels and allowing blood to rush into the chambers of the penis during arousal. And without sufficient nitric oxide, even if your desire is high and your testosterone is adequate, the physical mechanism simply won't work the way it used to, leaving men frustrated, embarrassed, and confused about what went wrong. And this is why it's so important to go beyond generic nutrition advice and begin understanding how specific foods, even those considered healthy, Interact with your unique biochemistry as a man over 60, because the rules change with age, and what once worked for you in your 30s or 40s might now be dragging you down, interfering with circulation, clogging your arteries, or throwing your hormones out of balance. And to truly regain your masculine edge and reclaim your natural performance, it's not just about adding the right nutrients or taking supplements. It's equally about removing the hidden saboteurs, the so-called healthy choices that actually chip away at your stamina and strength with every bite. And in the next segment, we'll break down in detail exactly which fruits are the worst offenders, starting with the one that masquerades as a summer favorite, but contains a dangerous combination of high fructose, low fiber, and poor nutrient density that spikes insulin and clogs arteries faster than many processed foods. And it's followed by another that's been pushed as a digestive aid. Its enzyme content disrupts gut health in older men, damages the delicate microbiome, and can even lead to hormonal imbalance and increased estrogen, a hormonal shift that directly suppresses testosterone and adds to the softening and fatigue so many men feel after eating it daily. And while these fruits may seem surprising or even controversial to call out, the evidence behind their effects on male sexual health is growing. And as more men make the shift away from these specific offenders and toward truly erection-friendly foods, the results speak for themselves. Increased morning erections, more spontaneous desire, greater blood flow, and a restored sense of manhood that many thought they had lost forever. And so this isn't about fear or fad diets. It's about informed choices, about recognizing that after 60, every food choice becomes either a step toward reclaiming your strength or another quiet retreat into decline. And the first step in that process is awareness, understanding which fruits are working against your goals, no matter how natural or innocent they seem. And the rest of this video will unpack exactly which fruits to avoid, why they're dangerous, what to replace them with, and how to rebuild your body's sexual and vascular foundation from the inside out, starting with what's on your plate every day. And as we begin breaking down the specific fruits that are secretly harming erections in men over 60, the first one on the list comes as a shock to many because it's often praised for being refreshing, hydrating, and low in calories. But beneath that reputation lies a dangerous cocktail of concentrated fructose, poor mineral density, and a high glycemic load that spells trouble for aging male bodies. And that fruit is watermelon, which, while delicious on a hot day, has one of the highest sugar to fiber ratios of any fruit. And when consumed regularly, especially in large servings as it often is, it floods the bloodstream with a fast-absorbing form of sugar known as fructose, which doesn't get processed like other sugars and instead gets funneled directly to the liver, where it's rapidly converted into triglycerides and stored as visceral fat, particularly around the belly. And this belly fat is more than just a cosmetic issue. It acts like an endocrine organ of its own, releasing estrogenic compounds that suppress testosterone, promote inflammation, and increase insulin resistance, all of which converge to choke off healthy blood flow to the penis and reduce nitric oxide output. Meaning even if you're hydrated and your libido is intact, the physical mechanics of arousal and erection begin to deteriorate because the very vessels that should be expanding and rushing with blood are now constricted, inflamed, and sluggish from the impact of this so-called healthy fruit. And while some studies highlight the amino acid citrulline found in watermelon as beneficial for blood flow, The reality is that the quantity of citrulline in a normal serving is minuscule compared to the amount of sugar you get. And for men over 60 whose insulin sensitivity is already declining, the net effect is overwhelmingly negative, especially when watermelon becomes a daily or weekly habit during the summer months. And the vascular system, particularly the tiny arteries feeding the erectile tissues, are among the first to show signs of damage, because these capillaries are extremely narrow and sensitive to both sugar and inflammatory stress, meaning any consistent dietary choice that elevates blood glucose levels contributes directly to endothelial dysfunction, a precursor to not only erectile problems, but cardiovascular decline. And it's not just about performance in the bedroom. It's about the overall function of your circulatory system. And as soon as you eliminate watermelon from your regular diet, you'll likely notice subtle but powerful improvements within weeks. Less bloating, more stable energy, better blood sugar control, and over time, stronger morning wood and more dependable firmness during arousal. And while occasional indulgence won't ruin your health, the problem arises when fruits like watermelon are consumed often under the illusion of being harmless or even helpful, when in reality, they're acting as silent saboteurs. And this brings us to the second, worst fruit, which is perhaps even more misleading because it's been heavily promoted by dietitians, wellness influencers, and digestive health enthusiasts as a miracle enzyme-rich snack. But for older men, especially those struggling with testosterone or circulation issues, it does far more harm than good. And that fruit is pineapple, which contains a digestive enzyme called bromelain that's often touted as anti-inflammatory. But in men over 60, especially those with sensitive guts or existing microbiome imbalances, this enzyme can disrupt the gut lining, leading to increased intestinal permeability, otherwise known as leaky gut, which allows endotoxins and inflammatory compounds to enter the bloodstream and trigger systemic inflammation that directly affects hormone balance and vascular responsiveness. And if that weren't enough, pineapple is also incredibly high in sugar, with a single cup delivering as much as 16 grams of fast-digesting glucose and fructose, which spike insulin and blood sugar rapidly, putting further strain on pancreatic function and exacerbating any existing insulin resistance. And while younger men might be able to handle this kind of sugar spike, older men with slower metabolic clearance and lower muscle mass often experience prolonged elevations in blood sugar after consuming fruits like pineapple, which leads to chronic low-grade inflammation, glycation of blood vessels, and ultimately damage to the inner lining of the arteries responsible for engorging erectile tissue. And what's especially concerning is that many men consume pineapple as a dessert or in smoothies, believing it's a smart alternative to processed sweets, not realizing that they're trading one blood sugar bomb for another, all while slowly draining their capacity for firm, spontaneous erections. And pineapple also contains compounds that may mimic estrogenic activity in the body, which can further skew the delicate testosterone-estrogen balance that becomes so crucial after age 60. And as testosterone naturally declines, the male body becomes more vulnerable to even small amounts of estrogenic input, whether from food, plastics, or internal fat stores. And this imbalance leads to more fat storage, less muscle, a softer physique, and ultimately a reduction in sex drive and performance ability. So when you combine pineapple's sugar load, estrogenic influence, bromelain-triggered gut disruption and inflammatory glycemic spike, it becomes clear that this fruit is not your friend after 60, especially not if you care about preserving your vascular strength, hormonal power, and sexual function. And what many men discover once they cut out pineapple is not only that they feel lighter and more stable in their energy, but they also begin to notice reduced bloating, more regular bowel function, and over time, improved erectile responsiveness, because when the gut is inflamed, it interferes with nutrient absorption and hormone metabolism, two foundational systems for male virility. And as you remove pineapple and watermelon from your regular routine, your body begins to reset. It becomes less burdened by sugar, inflammation, and hormonal confusion, and more capable of producing testosterone, dilating blood vessels, and responding to stimulation with greater ease and strength. And this is only the beginning, because the next fruits on the list are just as problematic and just as common, showing up in daily habits and well-meaning diets that seem healthy on the surface but wreak havoc underneath. And if you're serious about reclaiming full sexual function and vitality in your 60s and beyond, then identifying and eliminating these fruits is one of the smartest, simplest, and most powerful moves you can make. And now that you understand how watermelon and pineapple, two seemingly harmless and even celebrated fruits, can quietly sabotage male sexual health after 60, we turn to the next culprits on this list, two fruits that may appear exotic, nutrient-dense, or even gut-friendly at first glance, but in reality are often hidden threats to male vitality, hormonal balance, and especially the vascular system that is essential for achieving and maintaining strong erections. And the third fruit to be aware of, especially if you're over 60 and dealing with fatigue, reduced libido, or weak circulation, is the banana, which might seem counterintuitive because bananas have long been associated with potassium, muscle recovery, and quick energy, but the truth behind this yellow fruit is more complex and, for older men, much more problematic, because bananas are one of the highest sugar fruits commonly consumed. And their sugar composition, mainly glucose, sucrose, and fructose, creates a perfect storm for blood sugar spikes, insulin resistance, and rapid drops in energy shortly after consumption. And while younger men or athletes may be able to metabolize that rush of carbohydrates efficiently, older men with reduced insulin sensitivity often cannot. And what happens instead is a cycle of insulin surges, blood sugar crashes, and fat storage, especially in the abdominal area. And this matters more than most realize, because that belly fat acts as a metabolic disruptor, throwing off testosterone production, raising estrogen, and contributing directly to arterial stiffening and reduced nitric oxide output. And nitric oxide, as we said before, is the master key to achieving erections, because it signals the blood vessels in the penis to dilate and fill with blood. And when that signaling is impaired, the results are predictable: softer erections, longer arousal times, reduced sensation, and a gradual erosion of confidence that can seep into every part of life. And while some claim that bananas are beneficial due to their potassium content, what they fail to mention is that the level of potassium you get in a banana is minimal compared to the metabolic damage caused by the sugar and the glycemic spike. And there are far better, lower sugar sources of potassium that don't come with the same hormonal cost, such as avocados, leafy greens, and even pumpkin seeds. And another overlooked problem with bananas is that they are high in amines, particularly tyramine, and dopamine precursors, which in sensitive individuals can disrupt neurotransmitter balance, leading to irritability, mood swings, or even a blunted dopamine response over time, which is dangerous because dopamine is closely tied to arousal, motivation, and reward-seeking behavior, all of which are crucial components of a healthy male sex drive. And when that system is flooded or numbed from constant banana consumption, many men report a dulling of sensation, both physically and emotionally, which makes arousal and intimacy feel like more of a chore than a pleasure. And it gets even worse when you combine bananas with milk or smoothies. Common habits for older adults trying to eat healthier, because the sugar load from this combination triggers an even more dramatic insulin spike and can lead to low-grade systemic inflammation, which further damages blood vessel linings and reduces the elasticity needed for proper engorgement. And this is why many men report feeling bloated, sluggish, or even foggy after eating bananas, yet don't connect it to their declining libido or performance, when in fact the link is direct and scientifically supported, and eliminating bananas for even 2 weeks often produces remarkable changes in older men. Increased energy, reduced midsection bloat, better digestive regularity, and surprisingly, more reliable erections. Because when you lift the metabolic burden off your body, your hormones begin to balance, your vascular system starts to relax, and your body regains its ability to respond quickly and fully to stimulation. And right behind bananas on this list is the fourth fruit that needs to be addressed, and that is grapes, particularly seedless table grapes that are often consumed in large handfuls without much thought. Yet are some of the most glycemically damaging and hormone-disruptive fruits a man can consume after 60, because grapes, especially the red and green supermarket varieties, contain a concentrated dose of fast-absorbing glucose and fructose with almost no fiber to slow their absorption, leading to a powerful spike in blood sugar that translates directly into inflammation, fat gain, and insulin resistance. And while grapes do contain antioxidants like resveratrol, the amount needed to gain any benefit from resveratrol is far higher than what you'd get from a normal serving of grapes, meaning you're getting the sugar without the supposed benefit. And this is especially harmful for men whose vascular systems are already under stress from age, medications, or pre-existing conditions like hypertension or mild atherosclerosis. And grapes feed this inflammation like fuel to a fire, encouraging the buildup of arterial plaque, especially in the narrow, delicate vessels of the penis, where even a slight blockage or stiffness can reduce performance significantly. And beyond that, many grapes are also treated with pesticides and herbicides unless specifically marked organic. And these chemicals often contain endocrine disruptors, substances that mimic estrogen and interfere with testosterone signaling in men. And when your testosterone drops below optimal, not only does libido suffer, but so does your energy, your mood, your muscle tone, and your ability to burn fat effectively, creating a vicious cycle where everything begins to feel heavier, slower, and harder. And this is precisely why grapes, while tiny and sweet, are one of the biggest saboteurs of male vitality in men over 60. And once again, eliminating them for a few weeks often yields surprising results. Leaner midsection, clearer thinking, fewer sugar cravings, and yes, stronger, more spontaneous erections, because your body is no longer dealing with the sugar overload and estrogenic chemicals that come with grape consumption, And these improvements are not hypothetical. They've been reported over and over again by men who were told they were just getting old, but discovered that changing their diet, especially eliminating these hidden saboteur fruits, gave them a second chance at vigor, performance, and confidence. And it proves that food is either your greatest weapon or your quietest enemy when it comes to male sexual health. And the fruits that seemed harmless or helpful in your youth may now be the very foods silently turning the lights out on your performance and stealing your masculine edge. And while the world keeps telling you to eat more fruit, your body is telling you something different. Listen closely, because once you eliminate these last offenders, everything could change. And now we arrive at the final fruit on this list. The fifth, and perhaps the most deceptive of all, not because it's particularly sweet or indulgent, but because it's often marketed as a high-fiber, digestion-friendly, diabetic-safe superfruit that older adults are encouraged to consume regularly, especially as a snack or in juices, and yet for men over 60 who are battling declining testosterone, sluggish circulation, or unpredictable erectile strength, this fruit can quietly undermine every effort to maintain hormonal balance and vascular responsiveness. And that fruit is the apple. Yes, the humble apple, which, while revered for its fiber and antioxidant content, poses a serious threat to older men when eaten in excess or consumed in juice form, especially without the peel, because the modern apple is vastly different from what it used to be. Today's apples are engineered to be larger, sweeter, and shinier than ever before, containing high concentrations of fructose and glucose, with minimal fiber unless eaten whole and unpeeled. And even then, for men with already impaired insulin sensitivity, this sugar load can spike blood glucose levels and contribute to the slow erosion of endothelial function. And while some may argue that apples are low-calorie and full of nutrients, the fact remains that the typical commercial apple has lost much of its mineral density and instead delivers a large glycemic punch that pushes blood sugar upward rapidly. And when that happens, the pancreas is forced to release a surge of insulin to bring levels back down. And that insulin surge over time contributes to what we now understand as metabolic syndrome, a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, insulin resistance, abdominal fat storage, and hormonal imbalance, all of which are antithetical to healthy sexual function, because every part of male arousal, from libido to erection to orgasm, depends on clear arteries, low inflammation, and optimal hormone balance. And what's even more dangerous is the belief that juicing apples is somehow healthier or more cleansing, when in reality apple juice is one of the worst offenders for blood sugar spikes, stripping away all fiber and delivering a concentrated dose of sugar straight into the bloodstream with no buffering nutrients to slow absorption. And in men over 60, that kind of sugar flooding the system results in arterial constriction, energy crashes, mood swings, and long-term degradation of vascular health. And if consumed regularly, it can quietly contribute to erectile dysfunction by impairing the very nitric oxide pathways that are needed for the penile blood vessels to open, expand, and retain blood during stimulation. And on top of that, apples, particularly non-organic ones, are consistently ranked among the most pesticide-contaminated fruits in the world, according to the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list. And many of the pesticides used in commercial apple farming are known endocrine disruptors, meaning they interfere with the body's hormonal messaging systems, often by mimicking estrogen or blocking testosterone receptors. And as we've discussed, when a man's testosterone is already in slow decline past the age of 60, even small exposures to these chemical compounds can tip the scale further in the wrong direction, exacerbating fatigue, fat gain, low libido, and softer, slower erections. And so, despite the apple's reputation as a daily health staple, it has become a modern day Trojan horse for men seeking to age with energy, vitality, and confidence. And the good news is, once you know this, you can take action immediately by removing apples from your regular fruit rotation, especially apple juice and dried apple snacks, which are essentially sugar bombs in disguise, and instead focus on fruits that support male hormone health and vascular function, like avocados, which are technically a fruit and provide heart-healthy fats, magnesium, potassium, and fiber without spiking blood sugar, or berries like blueberries and blackberries, which have a low glycemic index and contain polyphenol that support endothelial health and boost nitric oxide production naturally without the sugar overload, and citrus fruits like lemons and grapefruits in small controlled servings, which help detox the liver and balance insulin sensitivity while providing vitamin C to strengthen arterial walls. And the key is to understand that fruit is not the enemy, but certain fruits, especially those high in sugar, low in fiber, or chemically treated, can become a silent threat to your manhood when consumed regularly without awareness. And for men over 60, when hormones, circulation, and metabolism are all undergoing age-related shifts, it becomes absolutely essential to stop making assumptions about what's healthy based on general dietary advice and start eating for your specific physiology and stage of life, because your body is no longer able to buffer excess sugar, estrogenic foods, or inflammatory triggers the way it once could. And the fruits we've discussed, watermelon, pineapple, bananas, grapes, and apples, though natural, all carry specific biochemical properties that interfere with your body's ability to produce testosterone, dilate blood vessels, and respond quickly and firmly to arousal. And that's why cutting these fruits out, even for 7 to 14 days, can result in noticeable changes. Stronger morning wood, increased drive, less bloating more, sustained energy, and in many cases, a newfound sense of hope and confidence that was thought to be lost. And when you combine that elimination with smart dietary upgrades, simple movement, better hydration, and the addition of circulation-friendly herbs or oils, the results compound quickly, and you no longer feel at the mercy of age, but in command of your health. And this shift is powerful because it proves that age is not the enemy. Neglect is. And once you begin to see food not just as fuel, but as medicine or poison, depending on your choices, you start to reclaim your body with every bite. And that is the core message here. Not fear, not restriction, but awareness, because you have the power to turn things around. No matter how long you've struggled with low energy, poor performance, or declining erections. And it begins not in the bedroom, not in the gym, and not at the doctor's office, but right there in the kitchen, on your plate, in the very fruits you choose or choose not to eat. And by removing these 5 worst offenders, you clear the way for your body to come back online, for your hormones to rise, for your blood vessels to breathe, and for your sense of masculinity to return. Not in some abstract or theoretical way, but in a deeply physical, visceral, and real way that you feel in the firmness of your morning arousal, in the confidence of your walk, in the spark that returns to your eyes when you remember that being over 60 doesn't mean the end. It means it's time to start living in a smarter, stronger, more intentional way. And if you've made it to the end of this video, then you already have what it takes to take back control, because the choice is yours. And it starts today, one meal at a time, one decision at a time, one victory at a time. Your body is listening, your future is waiting, and the power is already in your hands.